This Three Beards Media podcast may contain mature themes, and if you're not down with that, we got 3 words for you. Like the podcast. Nailed it!
Would you like to sample some of my nuts? Hello and welcome to another episode of Old Man Strength, podcast brought to you by the Three Beard Media Network and live from the AKC Andrew Downs studio, sponsored by Revelton Distilling Company and Wintrust Mortgage, Kyle Lehman. That was a lot. I am your host, Chris Shipley, as always, joined by my partner in crime and the better looking of the Three Beards Media Network, Aaron Wall. What's going on, Aaron?
Not a whole lot, as per usual. However, I have a bone to pick with you.
Okay.
I was on Twitter again. You and your opinions.
You know we're going to have a whole new show about this, by the way.
I know. I'm priming it. Priming the pump. First of all, this pains me to say, Chris. I applaud your top 3 pies.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Almost 100% correct. French
Yes.
silk and pecan. Yes.
Yes,
Pecan's
absolutely.
number 1
Yep.
for me. Peanut butter cup's a fine pie. I'm not going to pick it if there are other options, probably, but it's fine.
Okay.
My problem is you have what would be probably my 3 and 4 in your trash list.
Apple pie,
Strawberry
I'm
pie.
guessing.
No,
Strawberries.
strawberry pie is 3.
Strawberries
And apple
absolutely
pie
disgusting.
would be 4. Pumpkin's garbage. I agree with you on that.
Okay. All right.
Why are you always so wrong?
I'm not always wrong. You just said I was right.
But
You literally just said I was right.
But you went so hard the other direction with being wrong, it canceled out the being right.
Okay. First of all, mushed cooked apples, freaking disgusting. That's gross. It's either half mush or half hard. That's not good. I don't like it. And don't even get me started on the trash that strawberries are.
You complain about mush, so it's a texture thing with the apples, but French silk has no texture. It's mush.
No, that's
It's
different.
mush.
No, it's not.
It is too. There's no texture to it.
It's chocolate deliciousness. It's like, and strawberries and apples are out.
Oh,
They're out.
So you're so wrong.
The apple pie is the communism of desserts. That's exactly what
No,
it is.
God, get out of here. Jesus Christ. Introduce our fucking guest. I've had enough of you already. Jesus.
Well, fresh off his beautiful trek across Iowa and all things beer worthy, we're super excited to have the gentleman from Heartland College Sports, covers the Big 12. Again, is a big believer in the Iowa State 5-star bridge. Our man, Derek Duke. Thanks for coming on, Old Man Strength. We appreciate it.
Man, I appreciate y'all guys having me on. I've been able to listen to a few podcasts before that you guys did. I think the most recent one I listened to was one with Tommy Birch, and that was a really good one. So definitely looking forward to sharing some of my story myself.
Well, we appreciate that. Tommy's is hard not to like. So
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. So fresh off your trip from Iowa, let's just get that out of the way. How glorious was the Iowa State 5-star bridge, and how much of a boner did you have when you walked across it?
I would say a little bit of a chubby going across of it. Definitely a little bit. I had to walk on it during the day, so I didn't get a chance to walk on it at night, which obviously would have been a lot cooler. But I was on the other side of the stadium, so I didn't really want to go all the way back around and fight the concourse crowd and do all that. So I only got to go on it once, but it was definitely a good experience.
Right. And so for people that don't know, you were in town. I don't know if you planned your whole vacation around it, but you were in town and crossed the bridge because of the George Strait, Chris Stapleton concert. Which entertainer were you really there to see? Because this is a topic of discussion for people.
I'm from Texas. It's George Strait 100%.
Wow,
He's the king. He's the king of country music.
Amen.
I figured. But
the fact that his Pure Country movie didn't win an Oscar is a travesty in my book.
Oh God, no!
It is.
Hey, Aaron,
I'm sure there's a couple cars down here. You could probably find that playing on repeat somewhere. So for sure.
This is the part of the show where Aaron gets a migraine and starts to get a headache.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with the movie.
You cut out what?
I said there's nothing wrong with the movie, but Oscar worthy. Give me a break. Come on.
At least musical wise.
Well,
for sure.
Yeah, because he's great.
Okay.
But,
yeah, right.
But in that case, then Purple Rain deserved an Oscar too.
Don't try to compare Prince and George.
So you came. It was your whole trip up to Iowa, and I know you've been to Iowa before because I noticed that on Twitter. Was that just because you were going to go to that concert?
Yeah, we try to during certain events, certain times of year. I have a few free days, and that's been one of them. So I had a few days off already planned, and the concert just so happened to be there. It worked out, and so sometimes I got to plan my vacation months and months in advance. So when I saw that and that he was playing in Ames, I was like, yeah, that's. And I looked at the list, and I was like, man, he's going to Ames. It's like, I told my wife, like, we should just go. Let's go. We'll make a trip out of it. Go for a few days, and I'm really glad we did because the last time I was there just for business. So I went to like a football game. I was there for 2 nights. I was out early Sunday morning. So, and I got to see a few things, but I didn't get to see nearly enough as much as I wanted to. So for me to stay 5 days there, I got to really kind of take it all in.
That's fantastic. How did your wife like Iowa? Was this her first trip?
This was her first time to Iowa. I definitely think she really liked it. One thing that always catches us about certain parts of the country is just the cleanliness and how green everything is and how nice the people are. Those are really kind of the things that we like. Obviously, food and beer definitely factor into that. But everything was so beautiful, so clean, so green, and it's hard to complain when you drive kind of even outside of Des Moines. You see the beautiful countryside. It was really, really nice.
So you know what that means, Aaron? He didn't go to Fort Dodge.
Well, I mean, every state's got their problem areas. But, all right. So you touched on it there, the food and the drink.
Mm-hmm.
I know, and this was, you had a lot of recommendations from people in Iowa of where to go, what to do. I think you had the drinking part pretty well covered on your own, it looked like.
Oh, yeah.
But the food part, of the things that you tried and that were recommended to you, what was your favorite food thing that you discovered?
I think probably the 2 that caught me off guard were the first one would be at, I think, What You Smokin', the barbecue in Luther, Iowa. I had a lot of recommendations from that, and it's, kind of a little bit outside the way, but we kind of went up there on our way to Ames, and I'm sure glad we did. It said it was Texas-style barbecue, so that definitely grabbed my attention, and it was definitely comparable to some of the stuff I've had down here. It was really, really good and a really neat building and very, very cool place to go to. I think the other one was everybody obviously told me to go to Smitty's Tenderloin Shop to get a pork tenderloin sandwich, and it was good. Don't get me wrong. It was huge. It was a fantastic, cool little place that kind of stepped back in time in. But for me, I think the one at Smokey D's, their pork tenderloin sandwich, I think it blew that one out of the water. That was probably my favorite pork tenderloin sandwich I've ever had at Smokey D's.
Smokey D's is, I mean, there's a reason why you walk in there and they've got all those trophies and everything else because they are legit. I'm curious, you did your beer tour and things like that. You had quite a bit of breweries, things like that. What's something that you had here that you were a little surprised that was so good beer-wise up here?
I'll be honest with you. I don't get into the IPAs and the sours and the stouts. That's not really my style. Especially being down here, it's so hot all the damn time. Like You want something that's cold, refreshing, easy drinking, crushable. And to me, I'll tell you that the Ames lager I had was definitely a great one. I could definitely crush a lot of those, but probably from the brewery, I would say Barntown is probably my favorite one. I remember going to Barntown the last time I was up there, and me and my wife hit it up twice, both times for dinner. It was really, really incredible, fantastic. I actually had a meal at Exile that Friday. And to me, the Barntown one was just better. It was cheaper, and it was just better experience overall. But that's really probably my favorite brewery up there when I go.
Your Ames lager, was it a tall boy?
It was not. I was fortunate enough to get with Brent Bloom, and he gifted me a 6-pack. And me and my wife drank the entire 6-pack before the concert. But I think, as far as to my knowledge, they only sold those tall boys in the Souk Up end zone. So, and I wasn't sitting over there, so I didn't get any chance of that. They did have the founders beer. I can't remember which one that's affiliated with, but I did see people with that. But the line was crazy long. So at the concert, I just drank Busch Light. It was the easiest thing to find there. So that's what I stuck with for the night.
That's typical Iowa.
So
yeah, it is. Yeah,
completely acclimated himself to Iowa.
Yeah,
absolutely,
for sure.
So
awesome.
Well,
so
go ahead, Aaron.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, that's all right. Go ahead. You're right.
Well, I was going to say we've talked about the Iowa stuff, and we may hit back on it a little bit more later, but it's not really why you came on the pod. So
right.
Let's dive into who Derek is and where you come from, and give us a brief history of where you started and how you got to where you're at now.
Well, I'm originally from Shiner, Texas. So the hat here that I got on. So I come from a beer making town. So that's probably why I like beer so much. But I guess it's in my blood. But I was actually born down by the coast in Victoria, because the town that I grew up in doesn't have a hospital. So I had to be born in a different city. So I did that. But I mean, for me growing up, I probably grew up like a lot of other small town Americans. Shiner it's a town that's got a little bit over 2,000 people. My graduating class there was about 50, and that was considered a large class at the time. I don't know about anymore, but I grew up pretty small town kid, played all the sports I could growing up. And that's pretty much my childhood, really, is kind of being outside, playing as many sports as I could. As far as how I got here today, it's probably not that interesting, to be honest with you. I did not go to college. That is one of the things that I did not do. I think I'm the only member of our staff that probably didn't go to school, because I think a lot of the guys on our staff have journalism degrees and things like that. And after about 2 weeks of junior college, I kind of just tossed my books out the window. And I guess I didn't realize that books cost money too. So probably not the smartest decision on my part doing that. So I lasted about 2 weeks. I originally thought about maybe doing something labor-wise, and I actually, as a summer job when I graduated high school, I worked at the brewery here in Shiner. I worked there for about 2 years while I was going to school for a little bit, and then when I decided to not continue with school, I actually continued to work at the brewery for the next year and a half or so. And believe it or not, I actually was a brewer there at age 20. I was up in the brew house making some of the beer, and it was a great job, don't get me wrong, but unfortunately I didn't care for the pay that much, and I spent a whole lot of time at that place on Saturdays and Sunday that I did not want to be in. So after that, man, I got tired of it. Moved to San Marcos, Texas, found a job there. I was actually interested in being a police officer. I went through some of the training, and I took the test, and I passed. But at that time, there were certain situations going on in the area that kind of made me pause a little bit. And that's not really a career that you could, kind of have a second guess yourself. So I decided not to do that. Actually, I got a job offer at a bank, and I've been in the banking industry for the last probably 10 years now, to be honest with you. So that's kind of my story so far. And moved to San Marcos. We now live in Castroville, Texas, where my wife is from. So this is where we call home for right now. Eventually, we're going to probably move another 20 miles west, build a home once we're ready to do that. But As far as my writing career goes, that didn't really take off probably until I was about 22 or so. So I think it was about the summer of 2016. I always had a love for football. I always kind of had a creative side to myself, especially when it came to writing. Unfortunately, during school, we were writing about things that I didn't want to write about and that I didn't care about. So to me, that never interested me. That's probably why that some people are so surprised that what I do now. But none of that stuff interests me. If I'm going to write about something, I want it to be what I'm interested in, what I want to write about. And football was one of those things. And fortunately enough, I was able to find Pete Mundo, the owner of Heartland College Sports, and I just sent him an email. That's really my story. Like, I sent him an email, like, hey, can I maybe write for you? Is there a chance you have a staff opening or whatnot? And he brought me in. I went from writing one article a week, doing some previews back in 2016, and kind of just grew on from there. I'm still with Heartland to this day. I'm still writing to this day. And believe it or not, I wrote for free probably for about 5 years before I saw my first dime out of writing. And finally, I'm able to, actually get paid for what I love to do. And to me, that's just an incredible feeling. And I've been truly fortunate in that area.
Anytime during that 5 years you're not being paid, that maybe you're thinking this isn't it, or I mean, there's a lot of careers and a lot of things that people talk about where at some point you have a crux of a decision that you need to make, whether or not you're going to continue this dream that you want to do.
I think for me, I just had such a passion for the conference itself, and that's why I wanted to join up with Heartland, because at the time there was no other Big 12 outlet like that. That didn't exist. So for me, that was really something that I was interested in, and I was going to do whatever it took to make this thing work and make it profitable and help it grow. Because, man, I'll be honest, I think when I first started doing it and first started writing, we were probably lucky to have like 500 readers on our site. When it comes to page views, I bet like we were probably getting less than like 10,000 page views. And now we're up to sometimes getting in the million page views a month, depending on which part of the season we're in. So it's definitely grown over the years. I've really been blessed to see this thing grow as much as it has over the years. Obviously, we still have things we're learning along the way, still have things we're going to have to figure out, obviously. In this media world, you guys know it is changing ever so fast. Like every 10 seconds it changes. Like, so what you did 5 years ago is not going to work today. Even what you did last year isn't going to work today. So adapting has been a big thing for us. But for me, I don't think I ever had a doubt in my mind that this thing wasn't going to work, because there's definitely a need for some strong voices in the conference.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Because really there isn't, and I can't think of one offhand. I mean, there's all the team-specific sites, but as far as a media outlet that's dedicated specifically to the conference and not covering really anything else, I can't think of anything offhand. So, I mean, I think you guys are it.
Yeah, I don't know if we're probably not the only ones left. Obviously, people have kind of transitioned on to more video, audio, those kinds of things. But as far as written content goes, I don't know of any other ones. There might be some out there. But, over the years, we have seen a few outlets pop up here and there, started by these large companies, whether it's 247, Rivals, Yahoo, CBS, whoever it is. We have seen those come before, and they usually last about a year. So they usually don't stick because financially it never works out. But that's why I think I love doing what I do for this website in particular, because it's independently owned and operated with Pete Mundo. So I talk to the owner literally on a daily basis. If I want to say the word shit in my article, I could say the word shit and not have to look over my shoulder worrying if I'm going to get fired or get fined. So that's why I love writing for Heartland.
I think there's room for I don't want to say the little guy, because I don't consider you guys a little thing anymore, but I think that there's room for that. I take a lot of I listen to a lot of Chris Williams and talking about what he's doing with Cyclone Fanatic and Iowa Everywhere, and how these big conglomerates and these big places sometimes lose sight of their vision and their goal. And I think that opens up the opportunity for things like Heartland College Sports, for Cyclone Fanatic, and even to a small part, us at Three Beards Media. I mean, Aaron and I just posted yesterday, started this 2 years ago with 2 pods and no idea what the fuck we were doing. And 2 years later, we still don't have what the fuck we're doing. But, people have built the trust in us and things like that. So I think there's room for guys like that when they're passionate and believe in what they want to do. So.
Oh, for sure. Chris is definitely one of those guys I look up to. I always try to read his work when I can. He's a great guy. I've met him several times over the years, and I appreciate what he does because he, like in us, in our position, he is one of those independent websites. He is fighting for clicks and fighting and going up against the big conglomerates and the big boys. So I respect the little guys. I still feel like we are, still growing. I don't ever want to say we're the big kid on the block by any means. I always like having that chip on your shoulder when you're in this industry definitely can take you a long way and take you to where you want to go. And for me, that's how I try to write like that every single day. I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel and give you my opinion. And don't get me wrong, and I'm not trying to crap all over newspapers or anything like that. A lot of those are what they are. They're newspapers. They're news stuff. They're not necessarily opinionated work, pieces. And I think for me, that's what people want. They want that strong opinion on something that they love, and they want the passion about it. And I think that's what we at least try to do on a daily basis at the website.
So Denny wants to know what you were working in banking along those 5 years, right? That you were working and not getting paid. So that was supplementing. Yes. You were working extra after your hours at the bank or whatever else, I would assume.
Yeah. I still, to this day, I still have a day job. For me, it's not that I don't trust in what I do or trust our website. I just like having that base source of income, and then everything else I consider extra, because when I started working in this business, I wasn't making any money. So I had to have a job or else I don't know. I guess I would have been living out of the car or something. I don't know. Yeah. So I definitely had to have a job. I don't know if I will ever feel comfortable just going full-time writing. I mean, some people, sure. We have guys on our staff. Don't get me wrong. We have guys on our staff that's all they do. They do writing. Some do it for just us. Some do it for a different website or whatever they need to do to make ends meet. But for me, I like having that financial security of having a day job. And plus my hours are pretty flexible. I don't work a ton of hours, so I get off at a certain time every day. I go in early. I kind of leave early. So it kind of really just works with my schedule for right now, which I really, really like.
Do you think having the security of the day job contributes to your confidence of being able to say whatever you want when you write?
I don't think it does, because of who I work for. I mean, like I said, we're an independent website. I can pretty much say whatever I want. I mean, very rarely do we have something set that they tell us what we need to write. I mean, that for me, I pretty much just write what I want. I put it on our website, put it in our draft boards, and somebody will kind of just look over, edit it, and then it just goes. Like, very rarely do I have anything that gets taken down or removed or anything like that. I can't think of any time that's actually ever happened. Obviously, I'm not going to write an article and drop 13 F-bombs in an article, but if I say the word shit once or twice, it's not a big deal. But unfortunately, we do try to get some advertising involved, so sometimes that can make things a little bit tricky. But for us, I think you know what you're getting into already if you're willing to sponsor us.
Yesterday, when you were here, I met your wife, who was very, very kind, very nice. Obviously, Aaron, his job, he's out of town quite a bit. He wouldn't be able to do his job without a supportive wife. My wife is tolerant of, the stuff that I do down here with Three Beards Media, even though it takes time out of us. How important is it to have a spouse and a wife that is supportive of that, and allows you to take that extra time out of your doing for college sports outside of your regular job?
She's really been fantastic through this whole situation. Even when I wasn't making a dime, she respected what I did, because she knew how much I loved it and that one day it could turn into something. Luckily, it did, so everything kind of worked out on its own. But yeah, we've kind of learned to cope, I guess, kind of balance our time schedules now, because before I was so involved, and I did actually, believe it or not, I did a lot more traveling pre-COVID than I do now. Just not because now with so many teams in the conference, it's a lot easier to kind of take in all the games and the action from home. Obviously, we do have certain occasions where we will go to a game or the Big 12 championship in Arlington every year. That's kind of like our Super Bowl. But for the most part, she's been great throughout it. I mean, Saturdays, obviously, during the football season are off limits. Like, I don't leave. If I'm either going to a game or I'm staying at home, like there's no like anything else that doesn't happen.
There's no weddings.
You're not
Exactly.
you're not going to the farmer's market in the morning and then you
Yeah.
might get back in time for the first quarter.
Yeah, but what's funny enough is luckily all my friends have gotten married already. But like 2 years ago, I had like 3 fall weddings, and I was in like 2 of them back to back weeks, and I was like, oh my god, I had like that itch, so I'd always be kind of checking my phone at the wedding. We're out dancing on the dance floor, and I'm kind of getting a sneak peek of one of the games. So it's been great, but I think for us, we've kind of learned to go out Sundays, because just Sundays have kind of been turned into our days, really, because there's nobody's really out on a Sunday. Everybody goes out Friday, Saturday night. So we've kind of learned how Sunday's been kind of made for us, because it's really not that busy. A lot of places run specials on Sunday to try to get people in the door. So Sundays have kind of been our day to kind of really go out, or sometimes during the week as well. But yeah, Saturdays during the college football season are definitely off limits.
Well, let's be honest. Sundays, the Cowboys are on. You don't really want to watch those guys anyways.
I'm not a Cowboys fan.
That's my point.
yeah. I'm a Houston sports fan through and through. So yeah, I hate the Cowboys. I hope they lose every game.
So I lived in Dallas for a decade basically, before I moved up here to Seattle, and I understand why someone would hate the Cowboys.
Yeah, Dallas,
bananas.
Dallas, even to us, like down here, Dallas, like, is a different world. Like, it really is its own place. It's, yes, it's part of Texas, but it's just totally different from anywhere else in the state.
Yeah, I think I always got the feeling, because I traveled all over, Texas when I was doing my job there. And it always seemed as though Dallas was the place where nobody was from Dallas or from the area. It's where all the transplants go. And like San Antonio and, now not so much Austin now, but 10 years ago it was less so. And Houston, it's like, oh yeah, I'm originally from here. Or like you said, Victoria, I've been there. I'm from Three Rivers. Well, that's a podunk middle of nowhere place, and it's, but yeah, Dallas is in that respect does seem quite a bit different.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned Austin. I think there's probably more Californians living in Austin than there are Texans. So yeah, it's definitely Austin probably has changed so much. I don't know the last time you've been there, but it's from 10 years ago. It is. Yeah. It's just as big as San Antonio, if not bigger. I mean, that city is massive now.
Yeah, I've been up here 7 years, so it's probably, or maybe going on 8. So it's been 8 or 9 years since I've been down there, and I know it's all changed since the last time I was there.
For sure, it's probably the worst. To me, it's the worst place to drive through in the state of Texas on I-35, because no matter, it could be 3:00 in the morning on a Tuesday, and you're going to hit rush hour traffic.
Yeah. Now, the plus side is if you're going to Dallas, you just got to go a little bit east to San Antonio and catch that toll road that's like 85 miles an hour. That was just opened before I left, and you used to just haul down that thing and skip Austin altogether.
Yeah, well, I've used it a time or two. I don't fly out of Austin, and growing up we did have to fly out of Austin, but now we just fly out of San Antonio. So it's been a lot nicer for us to, because San Antonio is a lot smaller of an airport than Austin is.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead. I'm going to take a break here. We'll get a word from AKC Marketing, Andrew Downs, and from Revelton, and then I want to come back and let's talk Big 12 college towns. Let's maybe rank a little bit of worst to best Big 12 college towns and things like that. So let's get a word from a couple of our sponsors. We'll be back with Derek Duke.
Hey, it's Andrew Downs. I'm proud to support Three Beards Media, and I would love to work with you. If you need merchandise for your company, organization, band, softball team, whatever, I can help. From name brand apparel to promotional items, large orders or small, online stores, and more, I can help your brand stand out. AKC Marketing is local, based in Johnston, and we are an employee-owned business, so our costs are low and our turnaround times are fast. But most importantly, we give you personal service to make sure you get exactly what you're looking for. Email me at andrew@akcmarketing.com or find me on social media, and let's make some cool stuff together. Now sit back and enjoy this Three Beards Media podcast.
Why take the best corn in the world and make it into fuel when you could make it into whiskey? That's the question that launched Revelton, Iowa's most visible and fastest growing distillery. Owners Rob and Christy Taylor embrace the grain-to-glass philosophy, sourcing ingredients locally and overseeing on-premises production and bottling at their facility in Osceola. One sip and you'll agree that Revelton's handcrafted whiskeys, gins, and vodkas are the best you've ever tasted. And with the launch of their rye whiskey, made with 100% Iowa-grown rye and corn, and their new bourbon coming soon, there's more Revelton to love than ever. Iowa's own Revelton Distillery. ReveltonDistillery.com.
And we're back, and I do have a bottle of that bourbon. I've got the 82 proof that I broke into. Batch 1, bottle 22 out of 324. So I've got another bottle that's signed that's 100 proof, and then Aaron, yours is sitting here waiting for you too. So really good stuff. Man, it was smooth. They were packed that day that they launched that bourbon too. So apologize, Derek. I should have got you some Revelton as well, but
no, it's all good. I should ask for a little taste of it. Yeah, I forgot.
I should have. Well, I was down here when we were checking out the basement. I should have gave you some, but
Well, you just have to come back to Iowa again.
that's just another reason.
I'll have to come back.
There you go.
Check out their. I tell you what, they're. It's not really a tasting room; it's a bar. I mean,
yeah,
their bar area is so nice in their facility. I mean, it's a really fun place to hang out. So, it's really great, and they're a great partner. We'll have to update that ad.
Yeah, we will,
and talk about their new bourbon though. So.
That's right.
All right, so we're going to talk about the individual cities in the Big 12. Is that what you said, Chris?
Yeah, let's get a little insight here from Derek on let's rank these Big 12 towns and go from there.
Okay, I want to participate because I think I've been to most of them.
Okay, all right. So
I
have
just want to see.
I've been to one. I've been to Lawrence, Kansas, and that's a shithole. So that's
well, if you don't count the new conference mates, too much because I haven't been to Orlando or so, but I've been to most of the rest of them, I think. So let's go with, so we'll start from the bottom.
Yeah.
We'll start with the worst. I have a very strong opinion about which city is the worst. And I'm not talking game day experience, just the worst city. So okay. Derek, what do you think?
Oh man, you guys are putting me on the spot here.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I have not been to every Big 12 venue over the years as well. So some of these I have not been to. As far as the worst city goes, I'm gonna get some flack for this, but I definitely got to say it's Waco. And
yes,
my brother,
I knew you were gonna
absolutely say Waco.
My brother is a Baylor graduate, and don't get me wrong, there's some parts of Waco that are okay. Downtown's not bad. Some of the game day things are okay, but I mean overall, Waco is not necessarily a destination that you'd want to go to. And I'll just say this real quick that somebody close to me was flying down to Texas, and they were thinking about moving to Texas. And they happened to fly and say, I guess they watched the Chip and Joanna Gaines show. I don't even know what it's called. Mm-hmm. I don't even know what it's called. It's not really up my alley. So their wife watched that show, fell in love with Waco, decided they should fly to Dallas, drive down to Waco to go look at houses. And after about 20 minutes of that, they kind of realized okay, maybe this isn't what's advertised on TV. So I don't think this is going to work out. So they only stayed for about an hour and then left. So I think definitely for me at least it's Waco, but that's just my personal opinion there.
I 100% agree. I have a friend that lives in Dallas that grew up in and around Waco and went to Baylor until they told him to pursue his academic endeavors elsewhere at one point. And his wife graduated from Baylor, and it's such a dump. Such a hole.
I will say this: the beers and the food at George's is definitely incredible. That's the one good thing there. I would definitely go back just for that. But other than that, probably not.
Oh, good man. As far as I'm concerned, the list is done.
Right. Right.
I'll give my opinion here on the second worst. For me, it's the second worst for me is Lubbock.
You're just doing the whole gamut of Texas, aren't you?
No,
you're trying to get me killed, man.
I hate Lubbock. There's nothing there. I mean, their biggest attraction is Prairie Dog Town or some shit. Like it's a plot of land they fenced off with a bunch of prairie dogs sticking their head up out of the ground. Lubbock sucks because there's just nothing there. Like if you're not there for a game, game day might be great because everybody's there for the game, right? But as a town, it just kind of sucks.
I'll say this. I think Lubbock's definitely a little bit underrated, in my opinion. I think Lubbock gets definitely a bad rap just because it's so isolated. And it truly, it's kind of its own world. It's West Texas. I mean, and I am one of those people that enjoy West Texas. I enjoy the drive out there. I like driving and seeing nothing because to me, it's better than looking at traffic in some city. That's just my personal
for sure.
Derek's gonna love Nebraska.
That's just my preference. Hey, we actually drove to Omaha. On
that doesn't
Sunday.
count. That doesn't count.
It gets way more nothing. You keep going west.
I can imagine so. But for me, I don't think Lubbock's bad. Caprock Cafe is a great place. Spanky's, they got the huge fried cheese sticks. I really enjoy those. I don't think Lubbock's that bad of a place. It depends on what you define. If we're just talking cities, or are we talking like college towns? Because like no offense, but like I look at a place like Houston, and I don't get me wrong, like I'm a Houston sports fan and everything, but Houston is not really a college town. Like that is that is a city a massive city that happens to have a college in it. And the college, don't get me wrong, it's okay, but like the fan support there, outside of basketball is pretty so-so. I mean, we kind of saw for football season, it was pretty non-existent. Even when Texas came to town, I mean, hardly anybody was there. But for me, probably Houston wouldn't be necessarily a great college town. Now, is it a fun city to hang out for a weekend? Hell yes, it is. But I wouldn't consider that necessarily a college town. So I'd probably put that one up there, somewhere towards the bottom as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Most of the year, Houston is unbearable because of the weather. It's hot, it's sticky, it's awful.
Yeah.
So I can see that being toward the bottom of the list too. Toward the bottom of the list, a newcomer for me, Salt Lake City. And the reason I don't like Salt Lake City is the way they number all the roads. They say it's easy. I say it's dumb. And it's difficult because it's like 2,500, 104th, northwest, southeast roundabout. It's like, what are we doing here? Put a name on this road.
We went to, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. I think it was the year before. We went to Salt Lake City after I covered the Big 12 title game. We actually flew into Salt Lake City and then drove down the entire state of Utah all the way to Vegas to end our week. But I actually had a blast in Salt Lake City. I thought it was pretty underrated. A lot of people told me it wasn't that great. And I'll say this, the Utah Stadium is pretty massive. I don't know, it maybe doesn't look like that on TV, but the fan support within the city is pretty incredible to see. And I was kind of thinking the same thing. I almost thought it was more of a city with a college in it. But I will say there was definitely a lot of support for the Utes when I was in town.
Yeah, they show up for sure.
Mm-hmm. Especially on Twitter.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, luckily, it sounds like they're not going to be around very much longer.
Yeah,
according to their fans, they're already jumping ship. So.
Oh yeah, no kidding. Let's see what else. Who else is on in the not great list? Manhattan.
Oh, come on.
It's all right.
No, come on now.
It's not great.
No.
But again, I haven't been there for game day experience. It could be completely different.
My thing is with Kansas State, and I know people at Iowa State are not going to like this, but I think there's a lot of similarities between the passion between the two programs.
Oh, for sure.
Oh yeah.
So I think those are two. Kansas State is a very passionate program. Their fans travel like crazy. They have fan support at the games. It's always packed. The tailgating scene's great. I think Manhattan, Kansas gets a bad rap. If we're talking just college towns, I would probably prefer Manhattan, Kansas over Lawrence in the state. But, and Lawrence was surprisingly pretty nice as well. We actually drove through there, went to go check out the stadium before it got torn down. But I was actually very impressed with Lawrence as well, just the kind of the scenery around it. Now, obviously, the fan support for football is still kind of a work in progress, but I didn't think it was that bad.
I'll give Lawrence the edge over Manhattan because it's at least close to Kansas City.
That's fair.
I jokingly at the beginning said I had only went to one, so I didn't care for Lawrence, Kansas. I actually kind of dug the inside of Kansas's stadium, and maybe it was because when we went to last year, so when Iowa State played down there, not this last year but the year before, it was packed in there, and it was a mid-afternoon game, and the atmosphere was pretty cool. And it was the old stone, it looked like the old stone pillars you walk through or whatever. So it was an old stadium, but when the sun was setting and that crowd was packed, it was pretty cool. I did enjoy it. I didn't care for the tailgate scene. It was really packed and tiny and not very good. And getting to the stadium was atrocious. Like, we had to park on campus somewhere and ride a bus, and that was an absolute nightmare. So as far as that goes, the game day atmosphere outside the stadium wasn't super great, but I really was impressed inside. The only problem I had is that Kansas fans thought they were the shit, and they didn't quite remember how much they sucked in football for so many years. Unfortunately, we didn't win that game, so I couldn't really talk shit. But
was there porta potties there at the time? Because I saw the porta potty thing.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah. It was. Yep.
No.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about the game day experience around TCU. Like, I went to a game when I lived in Dallas at TCU. The stadium's nice. It was after they'd redone the remodel, but it just seemed like pockets of tailgating. And I guess maybe that's my Iowa State bias, where everybody's in one place.
Yeah.
And it's easy to find people at Iowa State when you tailgate, right? Maybe that's just because that's what I'm used to. But I had a good time at TCU, and that's a nice part of Fort Worth. There's some nice areas around there and some good food in that area. But TCU's was pretty solid. But the game day experience, I wasn't blown away by.
Yeah, and to me, TCU fans, it kind of be hit or miss whether they show up or not. And I think depending on the season that they're going to have. Obviously, 2 years ago, place was packed every game with Max Duggan, when they were undefeated and made that run. But TCU, yeah, probably a little bit spotty. Fort Worth's great city. My thing is, you guys are accustomed to Iowa State and the traditions there and the tailgating. I don't know if you're really going to be able to match that with another Big 12 school. I think Kansas State's very comparable, like I just mentioned. But, for the tailgating spots, you're probably looking at, two of the top three tailgating places in the Big 12 in Manhattan and Ames. So it's kind of hard to compare some of the other places, a lot around the Big 12 to those schools.
Yeah, I haven't though. So one I haven't been to that I think is probably got to be up there. I got to think Morgantown.
Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't been there, but I got to think Morgantown's a riot. It's got to be a good time.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have not been to Morgantown. That is still on my list. We've had 2 or 3 members of our staff go there over the past few years. Obviously, there hasn't been a whole lot to cheer about in the Neil Brown era. I guess last year, would count. But, up until, Will Greer and that 2018 team, between then and now, there hasn't been a ton there. But, Pete went there. He wrote a whole column about it. He absolutely loved it. From what I understand, it's moonshine and pepperoni rolls in the parking lot.
Fuck, I'm in. That sounds
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, you might gotta watch out so you don't step in any puke on your way to the stadium. But other than that, I think you'll be all right.
I'm a seasoned professional at tailgate and stuff. I can manage. Cincinnati, I liked Cincinnati as a town. I haven't been there for a game. There's obviously the the proximity to be able to go do things related to bourbon because it's not that far. To go to some of those places and stuff is a big plus. But Cincinnati, fun town. I had a good time when I was there, but wasn't there for the game. But I did hear good things about the game and the fans and stuff there from when we were there. Last year? I think we played there last year.
We were there last year. Yeah, it was a plan to go. Me and buddies were planning on going there and do the Kentucky Bourbon Tour. And then, unfortunately, my buddy relapsed a little bit with cancer, so we couldn't go. But it's on the bucket list for 2 years from now. So, new teams coming in. Let me ask you this: out of the 4 teams coming in, and BYU is already there, but with Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and BYU, what's your choice if you got to go to one to sit in one of those stadiums to watch? What's your choice?
I think if I had to go, probably see one of those programs this particular upcoming season, I would say probably Utah, Colorado, and Arizona will probably be the top 3. I think Utah, just because of how good they're expected to be this season, like they're expected to come in year one and be very competitive in the conference. A lot of people, depending on who you ask, have them as the favorites in this conference in year one. So that to me is very, very something I'm going to keep an eye on for them. And like I said, I've been to Salt Lake. I've seen the fan support there. It's pretty incredible. Colorado, I don't personally think they're going to be competitive this year in the Big 12. Like, I don't see them winning 10 games or 9 games like some people do. But just the show and the spectacle that Dion brings and the attention and the media presence he has, to me, definitely is going to turn some heads and draw some eyeballs just from him alone. And probably the last one would probably be Arizona and Arizona State. I'd say Arizona State just because the mess they're in right now after that whole Herm Edward thing. So, but Arizona to me this year is going to be probably the second most competitive out of the new 4 that are coming in. If they didn't lose their head coach, I might feel a little bit stronger about where they're going to be. But I think Arizona is going to be another one of those schools that are excited to come in. So if I had to say there's any backlash between the fans, I would say Utah fans are probably the most confident coming in. I guess that's a nice way to put it. There's definitely a lot of confidence. And I was on a radio show with Ken and Trent on Friday, and we were talking about Utah. And they asked me who the rowdiest fans were. And I told them it was Utah. And because let's face it, a lot of Utah fans feel like they don't belong here. Like they feel like they belong in the Big 10 or somewhere else, but they look as the Big 12 as a step down. But, I'm really happy to have them. I think they're a great program. They've been one of the most consistent programs in all of college football. So for me, I'm excited about Utah coming in and really all the schools. Like I'm happy Colorado's coming back. Like that's an old school Big 12 rivalry. That's an awesome trip. If you live in Manhattan, Kansas, Lawrence, Ames, wherever, that's a really cool road trip to go to.
Yeah, I agree. Boulder's a beautiful city, and the stadium location. I went to BYU last year when Iowa State was there because my boss is a BYU grad, so he bought tickets to watch Iowa State get beat BYU with me sitting next to him. So that was a good time. But that's a beautiful stadium as far as the setting and the mountains and stuff, and the people there nice and friendly, to the opposing fans and all that. You're not gonna, obviously not gonna get drunk and tailgate and get rowdy, but
you can get sugar high.
You can,
yeah,
you can get sugar high.
If you truly enjoy watching the game, right? It's a good atmosphere for that if you're into that. So, BYU is nice. I've been to, Tempe and stuff before, but not for games. And those cities have their own perks if you know anything about those universities and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting. I'm really interested in Utah this year because I think they're going to find there are more teams in the Big 12 that are physical because they kind of bullied the Pac-12 for the most part. That's how they won. They were big and they were physical and they bullied. They played a different brand of football than everybody else did in that conference almost. And I think they're going to find more teams that play that way here. And the grind of that being that kind of game week in and week out, it'll be interesting to see what happens. They could absolutely win the conference. I mean, it's possible, especially if Rising stays healthy and all of that. But I could also see it, just the wear and tear of it being more than they had expected.
For sure. And the crowds, man, they're going to be able to see some great Big 12 venues that actually have fans inside the stadium. Yes. Unlike the Pac-12, they're not going to go to Cal or Stanford. And, it looks like your local high school JV game attendance. So, yeah, they're going to be able to experience a lot of these great venues that we have in the conference.
It will be interesting to see how they handle those crowds and the hostile road environments as opposed to what they were seeing in the Pac-12. All those teams, the Arizona schools and Colorado included, I think will be a little surprised and I think that was evident last year with some of the new teams that didn't do very well in the football season that came in. Cincinnati, BYU, none of them did really well coming into the conference.
That's a little more, I want to say excusable. I don't know if that's technically the right word, but all those teams were coming, quote unquote, up a level, right?
Yeah.
They were coming into what was perceived.
Sure. Well, Cincinnati made the playoff 2 years before that. So, I mean, it's not like they'd never been in that environment before.
Right, but it wasn't week in and week out either,
right.
and they lost the studs that got them there, right, with Ritter and all those guys leaving. But it's going to tell you what the true state of the Pac-12 was to a certain extent when it disappeared by how these teams do. You're going to get a feel for just how good was the Pac-12 really. Outside of the team here or there, like Washington was obviously very good last year. Are they on par with, were they really on par with these other conferences or not? Because in the last, I don't know, what decade, Pac-12 been kind of irrelevant in football.
Yeah, for sure. It's fair.
Derek, I want to ask you one more question, and then we'll get to Aaron's Kyle Lehman mortgage question of the pod that he needs to think of before we get to it.
Okay.
But with this court case that's come down in the last few days, and the ramifications of what that's going to do to NIL, the speculation is pretty well determined that the universities are going to start pulling these players in as employees and so on. What does that mean for the upcoming Big 12? And where do you see a team like Iowa State in that new realm of college football?
For me, the first thing I think about is, just to be realistic here, and this is another question I had talked about last week, but we don't make as much money. Like the Big 12 is never going to make as much money as the SEC. As bad as we want that to happen and as bad as we want that to be true, like it's not realistic. Like that's just the reality of what we live in. Like the SEC has the most money. They always will have the most money. So they have the deep pockets. The Big 12 teams typically aren't going to have that. I think for a lot of Big 12 schools, some more than others are going to have to be a little bit more creative with their athletic budgets, what they do with the money, the funding, all those things are going to factor into play. You're going to need more help from everybody around with donations, fundraising, all those kinds of things are going to change. My biggest worry in the conference is going to be the possibility of maybe cutting some of these non-revenue sports, whether it's an Olympic sport or anything like that. That's kind of my worry moving forward with this because as much as I love football, it's great. It's able to fund so many things for the other parts of the athletic program. But I would really hate to see for those other sports to go away because we're so focused on football. And I love football. Like that is part of my life. That's part of who I am. And don't get me wrong, but it really would suck to see some of these other programs go away because they're considered, not important to as other ones.
I think what I'm interested to see on that is, are you going to see coaching salaries get reset? Because there's a lot of money going to coaches, because they had to go somewhere, right? As nonprofits, they can't run a big surplus, and so they're paying these coaches. Look, there's only so many coaching jobs, and so if you want to be a head coach, there's only so many opportunities to do that, and so our guy's going to pass on being a head coach at a lower division school, right, or a lower level school, say in Iowa State if Campbell leaves or whatever, to stay and be a coordinator at a Alabama that can pay them the same amount of money. I don't know. There's going to be guys that want to take those jobs,
right?
So are we going to see that? Because that's a lot. I mean, you take $2 million out of the coaching salaries, and you got a fair amount of money to pay kids with, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one way of trying to stave off some of the cuts of programs and stuff that you're talking about. I'll be interested to see if that finally comes back down to a more realistic number with these coaching salaries.
And I'll say this on that point. I think just right now in the current landscape of college football, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of money opportunities, big money grabs opportunities in the SEC, like I just mentioned. But sometimes it's not worth it if you're going to only be there for a year or two and then you get canned. You're going to be in a worse place than what you started 4 years ago for that program that you worked so hard to build at an Iowa State, at a Kansas State, or whoever it may be. So I think some coaches are starting to realize now the grass isn't always greener on the other side, because with more money comes more responsibility, more boosters involved. There's a lot of things behind closed doors that I don't think people realize that go on at some of these schools.
Yeah, some of those jobs are even more so now are going to be take the checks and take the losses jobs.
Yep.
Vanderbilt's never going to compete. Rutgers never going to compete.
No.
There's some schools there that are in those P2 right now that are, well, they're the ones that I think eventually might get kicked out of the whole shebang anyways.
That's another great point.
Yeah.
Because why, when Ohio State looks down the ladder at, Northwestern and some of these other schools that don't generate revenue and think, why am I carrying these guys?
Rutgers.
Yeah, Rutgers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like, why are we doing this?
Yep.
I think at some point there's a real chance that some of these schools are going to get left out. It's all very fascinating. It's quite interesting to see where it all settles out. But I think college football will survive, because it seems like, and I'd be interested in your opinion. I think eventually that's going to happen. That the top end of the pack, or the P2, is going to break off and form a semi-pro, or whatever you want to call it, type of independent league. Well, everybody else is still here, still playing football. So that's going to become the new college football. And I think, and I asked both of you this question, are you going to watch Alabama and Ohio State if it's not tied to the rest of college football?
For me personally, I don't cover either one of those programs, so I'm probably not going to be keeping a close eye on any of that stuff. Already as it is, I don't watch a ton of SEC football right now. I don't watch a ton of Big Ten football. And, to be honest with you, if I saw Purdue and Northwestern playing, or Purdue and Rutgers playing, or Rutgers and Northwestern playing, I'd probably rather pour hot sauce in my eye than watch those two play football, because I don't want to see any of those teams play each other, because I have zero interest in that. That's just the reality of what it is. But maybe Alabama, Ohio State probably would catch my eye. But you're right. At some point, some of these conferences, the upper echelon of those schools might be going, why am I carrying Vanderbilt around? Why are they should be holding my bags? They shouldn't be equal. So I think at some point it might get down to that, and that would be really unfortunate, because at that point all hell would break loose. And like you said, I think maybe these conferences break away from the NCAA or college football altogether. So I would hate to see that. I'd hate to see that.
I struggle with it because I'm probably not your typical college football fan. Like if Alabama is playing LSU on a Saturday night and it's a big, huge game, I don't really have a rooting interest, right? I'm an Iowa State fan. I live and die with Iowa State. I'll watch Iowa play just because they're I have a lot of friends that are Iowa fans and they're in the state. I'll watch Big 12. I'll watch some Big 10 that are around me or whatever so I don't know that I would. What I struggle with is if that's the case, then what's the affiliation to the school then? Like, you might as well just change it to the Alabama whatever, and they're now a state named team. I mean, they're not affiliated with college anymore. I mean, what's the point? That's
the Alabama football team.
Right. I mean, I don't what makes them tied to the university anymore after that? To me, that's conferences, that's rivalries, that's tradition, things like that make people want to watch. If it all of a sudden they aren't the Alabama Crimson Tide, then are those Alabama fans? I mean, that's what if Iowa State was not the Iowa State Cyclones and were not tied to the university that I went to, and all of a sudden they were the Ames, I don't know, Highlanders or whatever the fuck that is, I would be a lot less interested in watching that team. They're not part of my school. They're not part of the tradition that I grew up wanting to watch. So that's where I struggle with that when people talk about how they'll break away and they're not part of the NCAA anymore. Okay, well then what are they then? Because they're not college football anymore. It's not tied to the traditions that I love in college.
I think a lot of people feel that way, Chris. I don't think you're alone in that regard. And there's a lot of people that are like, well, if I wanted to watch pro football, I'd watch the NFL. Well, okay,
right.
That's exactly fair too. And then you get to the point of, these guys break away, but at this point, we haven't seen them, at least not publicly, recognize what makes the NFL so successful. Yeah. One, the parity. Why is there parity in the NFL? Well, they have a salary cap. They have roster limits. So there's only so many players. There's only so much money. And now I say parity, and that's in part because games are typically very close all the time. There's no just absolute annihilations most of the time.
Yep.
Like there is in college football. I mean, you got some poorly run franchises, don't get me wrong, that seem to get it wrong every year all the time. But
not this year, baby. Not this year.
The Bears are one of them. But in theory, they all have the same opportunity because they get to draft, and if you're bad, you get to draft it early, and the basis of it is that they all have the same opportunity. It provides parity. Right now, college football is me, and what can I get by the big universities, and it's going to kill it.
How much would Michigan shit their pants if Rutgers all of a sudden got the first pick of the high school draft because they suck so bad?
Right. Yeah. Anyways, we could go on forever about that because it's fascinating to watch and sad at the same time for what could happen in college football. But we need to give Derek the rest of his evening back here in a minute.
That's right.
So,
well, let's get our Wintrust question of the pod, and then we'll move on to the last segment, and we'll get out of here in the next 10 minutes. So, usually what we do here is Aaron will ask you the Wintrust mortgage question of the pod. We'll let you contemplate the answer while we play an ad for Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage, our trusted mortgage broker here with Three Beards Media. And then you can come back with your answer. So, Aaron, take it away.
Okay. I want you to think hard about your Iowa trip. We're going to get real Iowa specific here because it's fresh in your mind. Okay. You are stranded on a desert island.
This is my favorite question.
It's a magical island. There's a beer tap in the trees. You can have, and we're being specific, 3 to 5 Iowa beers. So pick your top 3 to 5 Iowa beers that are going to be on you're on this island they pour perfectly every time. They're the right temperature. Everything's perfect. But of the beers that you just consumed in the last week and ones you've had in the past, 3 to 5. Think about that. We're going to get a message from Kyle and Wintrust, and we'll get your answer right after we get back.
Are you in the market for a new house and unsure of the mortgage process? Want to know that you have someone looking out for you? Kyle Lehman from Wintrust Mortgage is a down-to-earth, knowledgeable lender who can be there for you in your corner. He can work with you in any of the 50 states and is just what you need to expand your home search. Kyle will work with you through the entire process with little to no work from you. Take the worry of the mortgage process out of the equation so that you can focus on looking for your dream home. Contact Kyle at www.wintrust.com/Kyle-Lehman or call him at 515-473-0546.
All right, and we're back. So, perfect tapped beer on a deserted island, 3 to 5. Your choice, Derek.
Number one's got to be Ames Lager, right? I figured that's got to be number one on my list.
There you go.
I got to go Ames Lager on mine. I mean,
let me mark that. I'm going to cut that for Brent. We'll put that. That's a promo.
Ames Lager for sure. I mean, like I have a blog coming up, and I wrote, once that hit my lips, like I knew I didn't want to stop drinking that, and I didn't. I could have drank like 10 more of those if I wanted to, but I had a concert to get to. But that's probably number one. Number two, it'd probably go to Exile. I had the Ruthie at Exile Brewing Company. The believe it or not, the Airbnb we stayed at in downtown Des Moines had like a 6-pack of that sitting in the fridge. So we got to taste that before we even got to the brewery itself. So that was pretty cool. So I really enjoyed that one. My third one, I got to give a shout out to Barntown. The Iowa Gold to me is probably one of my favorites as well. So I had to throw a Barntown on there. If I had to throw an honorable mention, there was, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a place, there's a brewery in Polk City called Fender's Brewing Company. They had I think it was called The Platform. That one was very, very good. It was a pretty cool brewery in downtown. And I'll say this, shout out to Polk City. Like, that was probably one of the most beautiful places we went to on our trip. I wouldn't mind living in a place like that.
Nice.
Polk City coming in strong.
Right.
Yeah.
So, well, that's a pretty good list. I've actually not had all of those. I don't think I've had a Ruthie since I moved out of Iowa before Exile ever became a thing. And I don't get back as often as I should, but I'll probably have one this summer when I come back, Chris. Make sure you have some.
All right. I got it. You bet. I'll get you right hooked up.
You better.
Derek, we really appreciate your time. We normally end this last segment with, I'm sure you know who Steph Copley is. She's part of the We Will Collective and a big Iowa State fan, and she was one of our guests a few years ago and famously told me and the host to shut the fuck up so she could get her point across. So in turn, we decided to make that a segment and sponsor it by inviting people to donate to the Young Women's Resource Center, which is an organization that helps young women get on their feet after tragedy and other things. We've done a few fundraisers for them. It's a really super great organization. So the way this works, Derek, is I'm going to play an ad and with a QR code for people, if they're watching, to donate to the Young Women's Resource Center. And then when we come back, Aaron and I have to shut the fuck up, and you can say whatever you want without us interrupting and without any kind of repercussions whatsoever, other than, of course, whatever happens on your own time. So,
and it can be about any subject.
That's right. Any subject whatsoever. You can make fun of Aaron.
Whatever you think the world needs to hear.
That's right. So let's get a word from Steph Copley about the Young Women's Resource Center, and then we'll come back and we will be back with Derek on that last shut the fuck up.
Hey everybody, it's Steph Copley, the woman behind the STFU segment on the Old Man Strength podcast. When I told the guys I wanted to sponsor this segment, they recommended that I make a charitable donation instead, so that's what I did. I chose the Young Women's Resource Center in Des Moines, Iowa. They're a nonprofit that supports, educates, and advocates for girls and young women ages 10 to 24. Their whole goal is to make sure that these young women become strong, self-confident, and successful. And if you know me at all, you know that aligns with my goals as well. If you're interested and would like to donate, check them out at ywrc.org and donate today. And remember, don't forget to STFU and listen every once in a while. Thanks.
I just love how stuff is so nice and polite and STFU, and we just drop the F-bomb all the time. So, all right, Derek, now's your chance. We have to shut up, and you can say whatever you want.
I don't know what I'm really supposed to say here, guys. You guys, I don't think I've ever done a segment like this before. So I'm gonna tell you guys a quick story, just about my experience, one of the best media experiences I have. And I'm never supposed to tell this story. This story is never supposed to get out on the airwaves, so I'm just going to tell it anyways. It's been like 5 years now, so what the hell. Back at Media Days, I think 2018, we were up in Frisco at the time, and I can't even remember what the stadium's called now, the little practice facility for the Cowboys, at the Star in Frisco. We're at the Star in Frisco. I'm with one of our guys, Dave Beal, outside the Star. We had a long day of riding. We come out, we smoked. He was a smoker, and he goes, hey, you want a cigarette? You want to share a cigarette with me? I'm like, sure. I'll have a cigarette with you, Dave. Well, let's go smoke outside. And we sit out there. We smoking a cigarette, just kind of shooting the shit. And all of a sudden, a guy comes around back, goes, hey, guys, you mind if I have one of those? And we both looked, and we looked at each other, and there was Joel Klatt standing there, bumming a cigarette off of my buddy Dave. So he just told us, I remember he said, please don't tell my wife, and please don't ever tell anybody about this moment again. And we both agreed at the time, but you know what, at some point that story had to make its way out. So I figured what better time to break out a good story like that than right here. So we shared a cigarette with Joel Klatt. We shot the shit for about 20 minutes, and we even talked about that famous tornado game, I think in 2005 in Ames. So we had some good conversations while enjoying that cigarette, every puff of it. So it was fun.
Shout out Big Play Curvey, who picked him off in that game. So
owner of Coach's Kolaches.
That's right.
Yes. Very good. Very good, by the way.
Derek, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Why don't you give everybody just an idea of where they can find you on social media and where they can get your content?
Yeah, so you can find my content, obviously, at heartlandcollegesports.com, independent Big 12 website covering everything from football to baseball and everything in between, basketball as well. Right now, I'm heavily involved in our baseball content. I handle all the baseball stuff there. Regionals coming up, so be sure to check out the site if you are a college baseball fan. You can find me on Twitter at DerekDuke25. I'm pretty much just talking Big 12, drinking beer, shooting the shit, doing whatever. So if you like it, give me a follow. Other than that, man, I don't really have a ton left to say here, but thank you guys for having me on. I really do appreciate it. I really did enjoy my trip to Iowa, and I'm not just saying that. I really did. I really do mean it. Beautiful, beautiful state, even better people, great food, delicious beer. It was really a combination of things that really took me and my wife by surprise. I've actually got a blog post. I know I've been kind of tweeting out a lot of things about my trip so far that I had. So I have a blog post coming up on, I guess that's going to be tomorrow, the 29th, May 29th. Should kind of have a full recap of my trip and some of my favorite spots. So, and I kind of dive into what makes the state of Iowa so special to me.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, that's another episode of Old Man Strength. Aaron, got anything to close out your infinite wisdom?
No, I don't think so. I think that's it. I mean, we covered a lot of ground today, and boy, I could talk football and what's happening with it for hours, but it'll be interesting. So I appreciate your insight, Derek, and thanks for coming on. And if we can ever do anything to help you out, you let us know.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you all for having me on. I love talking football with college football fans. That's what gets me going every day.
Absolutely. Well, you guys have all listened to yet another episode of Old Man Strength on the Three Beards Media Network. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I know the Hawk's Eye View team is getting ready to gear up for a new episode. There's the Three Beards Media koozie. That's the vintage logo is what that is, Derek.
That's right.
Check out the other podcast that's current right now. This season is Fall Starts. We had a really great episode with Travis Justice from the KXNO Morning Rush, and Ian Bagg, famous comedian, is going to be on next week. And then Teddy Holly and I from Ball Don't Lie are going to launch a summer series called Climbing Mount Rushmore, where we do exactly what Aaron hates. I will rank the greatest things ever, and he will and Teddy will argue with me. But the beauty of this is, Aaron, is we're going to have a guest on every year. He's going to give us a Mount Rushmore of their most hated Iowa State players, and we're going to argue about that as well. So it's going to be a fun little series this summer. We're going to launch it out, so check out that. You can look at the Twitter feed for that. But otherwise, we appreciate it. Everybody have a great night, and thank you for listening.